What do we want? Thank you. Thank you.
These are the outpourings of recognition of the struggles of our people.
We were sent here by Mike Tyson.
It's been one of the most painful marriages, most painful emotional experiences, to marry the struggle of my people. I knew, of course, when I married him that I was marrying the African National Congress. I was marrying the cause of my people. But that cannot be translated into emotions. It is not possible for me to translate into words or put across to anyone the amount of love, the amount of warmth that exudes from him behind those bars, and the amount of love that has sustained our marriage.
Your Worship, I would say that the whole life of any thinking African in this country drives him continuously to a conflict between his conscience on the one hand and the law on the other. It was only when all else had failed, when all channels of peaceful protest had been barred to us, that the decision was made to embark on violent forms of political struggle and to form Umkhonto weSizwe. We did so not because we desired such a course, but solely because the government had left us with no other choice. In the manifesto of Umkhonto, we said, "The time comes in the life of any nation when there remain only two choices, submit or fight." That time has now come to South Africa. We shall not submit. We have no choice but to hit back by all means in our power in defense of our people, our future, and our freedom. During my lifetime, I have dedicated myself to the struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.
Mrs. Mandela, what are your feelings today after the life sentence passed on your husband?
Well, I am slightly relieved. It could have been far worse than this. In fact, my people and I expected death sentences for all the accused.
Nangu, nangu, nangu Mandela, nangu, nangu, etilangweni. Nangu, nangu, nangu Sisulu, nangu, nangu, etilangweni. Ini wema Africa, ayu
was staying in cell number 7, and I was in cell number 11. So there was only one cell in between us. To begin with, we used to spend 23 hours in the cell. You got 30 minutes exercise in the morning and 30 minutes exercise in the afternoon.
In Robben Island, we were eating D diet and F diet. D diet was made for colored and Indian prisoners. F diet is for Africans. Now the F diet actually consisted of the soft porridge in the morning, boiled millis during the day, that is midday, and then soft porridge in the afternoon. That is for us as perhaps your supper. That was our standard food.
We wanted something to do, so they then made us crush stones in the quadrangle. We produced gravel with the 4-pound hammer. But once we left that, we then went to go and work at the stone quarry. Then they would take us to the sea to go and get seaweed.
Prisoners were buried neck deep in the ground and then urinated in their mouth. Prisoners were hung up in the ceiling with their toes barely touching the ground and left this way the whole day long. The working conditions were the most severest conditions you could find.
They were not allowed to speak to Mandela. We were not even allowed to salute shy slogans like the African National Congress slogans, Africa My Buye. We could not do that in the presence of the warders. Mandela is always the man who's lifting his arm first when he sees us. But they will leave Mandela there and come and arrest you and take you to your isolation. What is most important was that the foolishness of the government was this. They take you to isolation to the same area where Mandela is. When you get to the isolation, that's where you managed to see Mandela and to talk to Mandela in the isolation.
I myself happened to go to the isolation cell on a number of occasions, sometimes for 1 month, sometimes for 6 months. And every time I got there, I saw this man. He's an absolute dynamic person. He is 6 foot tall, physically fit. He used to be an amateur boxer in his days. But with us, he was a leader. He was there at all times.
I think if he were asked to relive his time, he'd do exactly the same things, even if he knew that he'd go to Robben Island.
I think the reason that Mandela was transferred from Robben Island, it's because Mandela in Robben Island didn't have any apartheid, question of trying to pick and choose amongst people and say that this is my organization. He took us all one and the same. All one and the same. Actually, if I speak of Mandela, I'm not speaking of Mandela alone. I mention all the ANC leaders.
We always looked upon, much as there were these restrictions, looked upon it to that section to be given guidance, to be led, even in prison, on our day-to-day struggles that we're carrying on.
The ANC has gained immeasurably from the leadership qualities of Nelson Mandela and his colleagues in prison. Our strength has been the strength of those who were condemned to spend the rest of their lives in prison. One of them is here today, Andimba Toivo Jatoivo. He was there with them. They accepted their imprisonment as being itself a battleground, a part of the struggle, and they settled down to that. They were as good behind bars as they would have been outside of those bars. That is how they took their imprisonment and transmitted this determination, this commitment to the rest of us, to the rest of our people, indeed to humanity.
I am to bring you a message from the people who are today on Robben Island. Let them speak for themselves. The comrades declare the sweet sounds of Wembley still reverberate in the area of every political prisoner in this country. Not the high walls, not the electrified barbed wire, not the iron bars, and not edict upon edict could prevent your message, the people of Britain, from reaching us. Like never before, the anti-apartheid movement is sending icy shivers down the malignant spines of the fascists. And across the Atlantic, old Jesse Jackson performs at his sterling best.
Repeat these words, free Mandela! Free Mandela! Free Mandela! Free Mandela! Free Mandela! Down with apartheid! Down with apartheid! Free Mandela! 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 Free Mandela!
Attention! This gathering is illegal. You are given 2 minutes to disperse from your walkway. No action will be taken. Order! Parlement is ontzitten. Je hebt 2 minuten tijd om hier te gaan. Anders zal ons moet optreden. Dit is nu 12:34. Ons geen tijd tot 12:36. Dan moet je hier gaan.
No, I don't want to negotiate at all. Look, nothing whatsoever. It is not being that.
The town of La Courneuve is today honoring Mandela and Darcy.
La ville de La Courneuve rend aujourd'hui hommage à Nelson Mandela et Dulcie September.
Mr. Mayor and honorable councillors,
Monsieur le maire et messieurs, mesdames les membres du conseil municipal,
on behalf of our people, we appreciate and thank you for this honor.
Mangalaya Tanohari Mangalaya Tanohari Mangalaya Tanohari.
The Mandela 70 Committee condemns the banning of all celebrations intended to commemorate the birthday of the people's leader, Nelson Mandela. Throughout the world, people of all nationalities have honored Mandela as a symbol of dedicated leadership of the people of South Africa. Governments and organizations have sent messages of congratulations to the Mandela family. Internationally, mass rallies, concerts, marches have been organized to express renewed demands for the unconditional release of Mandela, and yet in South Africa, the government has harassed, intimidated, and jailed scores of people connected with their birthday celebrations.
Dear Mr. Mandela, I'm greatly pleased to extend to you on your 70th birthday the best wishes of the Canadian people.
On the occasion of the 70th birthday of Nelson Mandela, I wish to assure you of my solidarity and of the will of France to fight at your side for the freedom of people in love of justice and liberty, of whom Nelson Mandela is a symbol. Yours respectfully, signed, Francois Mitterrand, President of the Republic of France. Thousands of British trade unionists are taking part in major events in Britain, supported by the TUC, to mark the birthday of Nelson Mandela and to call for his release and for the release of all political and trade union prisoners in South Africa.
I think basically this is a consciousness-raising event. You know, people can find out about South Africa, about Nelson Mandela, and make their own choice. No one is preaching up here. They're just presenting information. So I don't know. I think it'd be nice if this had an effect in South Africa, because I think it's South Africans themselves that have to change their country. You know, we can shout all we like, but it's up to them. They have to do it. You know, this event could only happen in the 20th century. You know, it's basically an invitation to the South African government to say, join the 20th century. Dismantle apartheid. It's inhuman, it's illogical, and it's cruel.
Today is Nelson Mandela's birthday, but we also celebrate the fact that we know in very little time we'll be celebrating the ending of apartheid in South Africa.
Sing it with us, come on.
On behalf of my country and the leaders who are behind bars, who have been held in incarceration for over 25 years, I wish to thank the entire international community, particularly the artists, for their great commitment and their complete identification with our cause. We are very sorry we cannot be with the international community. We are very sorry we cannot take part in this great gathering.
I think the people here are very, very disappointed. We were looking forward to being together to celebrate this occasion, and we were all very, very bitter about the banning. There was no need to ban this concert. It is for political reasons, obviously, and as I have said, just indicative of the state's paranoid fear about popular resistance in the country.
There's been pressure on the BBC in this country, who are showing the whole of the event, and their pressure has come from the South African government, who've said, how can they support an event which is supporting an organisation which has not given up, revoked violence, and so on, and all of that sort of thing. Now, it's a sort of outrageous attempt to interfere with what the BBC do in this country, and it won't succeed.
I think the pressure that it's putting on South Africa has already made itself very evident. I think the South African government has tried desperately to stop the BBC from putting this on the air, trying desperately to stop from this message being sent to the 60 countries that have tuned in to our satellite to carry this event. I think already we know that we have touched a nerve that it was very important for us to touch.
No matter what the South African consulate says, no matter what Mrs. Thatcher says, the fact of the matter is that apartheid is wrong. Now, I haven't said anything political, have I?
I think that the government in South Africa is so afraid of this man who's on the inside and still able to make a difference, then there will be some changes made after today. I think that they probably won't let him out because the man does not want to be let out under any conditions. He wants to be let out and continue to do what he has been doing. He's willing to die for what he believes in, and you have to respect and really be very in awe of an individual like that, and that's why we're here.
We are not presumptuous enough to feel that music can free the world or even South Africa, but all we know is that this concert will help to raise consciousness of all the people around the world, and we thank everyone who has participated in this concert.
25 marchers, each one symbolizing 1 year of the 25-year imprisonment of Nelson Mandela, will march 590 miles from Glasgow to London's Hyde Park, arriving there on July 17th, Mandela's birthday. Glasgow was the first city to honor Mandela with the freedom of the city.
Today's demonstration in Glasgow is the biggest anti-apartheid movement demonstration ever in Scotland.
They have thrown us in prison, they have murdered us, they have tortured us, they have tried to intimidate us into silence. And they thought that you would forget. You have come to say today that you did not forget and that you are still with us in this battle, and we thank you for that. I have a feeling, my brothers and sisters, that our time has come. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what P.W. Botha says, our time has come. It doesn't matter what Margaret Thatcher does, our time has come. It doesn't matter what Kool does not do or cannot do or will not do, or that Reagan is on his way out and still refuses to do. Our time has come. We will save it.
It was 25 years ago this very day. Held behind four walls all through nights and days. But the children know the story of that man. And I know what's going on right through your land. 25 years ago. Mandela Day. Oh, set Mandela free.
demonstrating for the freedom of South Africa, the freedom of Namibia. We are demonstrating for the total and absolute abandonment and eradication of the apartheid state. Nothing less will do us. I want now to introduce you to 25 people, each one of them symbolising a year of Mandela's imprisonment. 25 people from all walks of life who've walked 600 miles from Glasgow, have committed a tremendous interest in the anti-apartheid cause, in the freedom from Mandela. I give you the Nelson Mandela Marchers. Viva the Marchers!
Today, we ought to be celebrating the release of Nelson Mandela, and we could be celebrating the release and the leadership of that marvelous African if apartheid were ended. And apartheid could be ended immediately if the international community would act, if the governments of the Western democracies, including our own, would stop talking and act.
Tomorrow, Nelson Mandela will be 70 years old. The violent South African government, which continues to torture men, women and children in detention, to deny health care and education to those whose skins are not white, to starve, dispossess, and shoot those living in the frontline states, has offered Nelson Mandela his freedom if he unilaterally will denounce violence. What a shameful request. Nelson Mandela refused freedom on those terms.
Over 1,000 million people throughout the Commonwealth in 47 countries want me to bring you a message of their solidarity with you. I tell you that on this plea, the Commonwealth has banished division, takes strength from that oneness of purpose as we send forth a message to Pretoria: free Nelson Mandela.
Any sensible government would realize that Nelson Mandela is absolutely indispensable for peace and stability in Southern Africa. Southern Africa needs Nelson Mandela. The world needs Nelson Mandela. We need Nelson Mandela. I said, we, all of us, the world needs Nelson Mandela. Do you agree? Campaign with us so that no government, not this one or any other government, will want to collaborate as they do with apartheid. We say, campaign with us for a reprieve for the Sharpeville 6. We say, campaign with us for the release of Nelson Mandela and all our political leaders now.
My father says, I am a member of the African National Congress. I have always been a member of the African National Congress and I will remain a member of the African National Congress until the day I die. Oliver Tambo is much more than a brother to me. He is my greatest friend and comrade for nearly 50 years. If there is anyone amongst you who cherishes my freedom, Oliver Tambo cherishes it more, and I know that he would give his life to see me free. There is no difference between his views and mine.
We have been witnessing the unfolding, the transformation of a dream into reality. The dream that humanity should be mobilized to speak with one powerful, united voice in support of that struggle which Nelson Mandela has said is a part of his life. I do not know when this dream manifested itself for the first time, but I do know that seldom in its history has the anti-apartheid movement achieved so much. Where do we go from here? We ask you to continue to regard sanctions as being essential to the resolution of the problem of apartheid. And to those who are often concerned, and we all are really, about the rising levels of armed and violent confrontation, we say, more sanctions means less prospects of the violent conflict mounting to unmanageable dimensions.
Sanctions, sanctions, sanctions. Do not buy from companies who refuse to divest in South Africa. It is working. I was talking with Nelson Mandela's lawyer yesterday. We did an interview together. And even I was, not to say skeptical, but misinformed about the strength of sanctions. And he's saying to me over and over and over again, it works. So if there's any message I can say to people, it works. Sanctions, sanctions, sanctions.
We certainly have made the connection finally between the cultural boycott and the economic boycott. And everybody's starting to realize, well, we can all work together on this. Whatever we do for a living, it's not only boycotting the Shell oil gas station, but it's also not going down there to perform. And now it's time to spread it into like the golfers who are still going down and the race car drivers. I mean, they're virtually the only ones left. And very soon, once the isolation is complete, the apartheid regime will fall.
What the international community is doing is just complementing to what we are doing ourselves. We are our own liberators. The progressive people in Britain, the ANC and SWAPO, and all the loving freedom people in the world are marching towards Pretoria to open the gates of the jails in Robben Island, Portsmouth, and Windhoek to release our brothers and sisters.
In this land of Africa.